Hello and welcome to episode 170 of the ANF podcast on the ANF network with me, Scott Casson-Rennie, and Emma
Al Coates. How are you?
I'm fabulous. How are you?
I'm really well, actually. I don't know why, because it's the first week of the holidays and everything's fine. We've sort of gone to a one-child situation. A bit weird.
Just hearing that, it's the first week of the holidays. I remember those days. 8 weeks ago. And we've still got another 4 to go.
How anyone's left alive at the end of the summer holidays in Ireland amazes me.
I know. I'm horrified at myself, actually. But to be fair, I think because, well, it's his birthday tomorrow, actually, 17 tomorrow. I think he's quite independent, so he gets in the bus, goes into town during the day and comes back in the evenings and stuff like that. So, during the day, he keeps himself occupied. It's not like he's round our feet or anything. And we're at work as well, so, yeah.
I mean,
probably the first year it's been like this.
Well, yeah, and I was thinking, I think back like 5-6 years when the little ones were, well, the big ones now, but little ones were like 11, 10, 12, 13, that sort of age, and just the absolute everyday by the skin of your teeth. What we're going to do today? How are we going to keep the peace today? And just now, like, what's her face? She just hot us on.
What's her face? And to be fair, so this is the summer where they do that growth thing, isn't it? This is the summer going to high school. They end year 6 and then they go to high school and they're like different people. They're like devils possessed and they've grown and they're all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, she's about 3 foot taller already. She's she went to the shops. So she's like a girl. She's like a girl. Came back a teenager. Like she's bought clothes. And I found her putting makeup on. She's not allowed to put makeup on, but it was like she's like being so not interested, and all of a sudden she's interested, and you go, well, fair enough.
It does make you wonder what goes through their heads in that transition between primary school and high school, doesn't it? And how much they worry and don't say, or what
again, with the 2 other ones, it was massive every day. It was simmering. And what's her face? I should give her a name. I said to her, are you stressed about this? Like weeks and weeks ago. And I said, what are you thinking? A nice, like proper social worky dad sort of chat. Yeah. And she went, no, I'm not bothered. And I went, and I thought, and it was like, I tried, and she's like, just not bothered. She's not worried, not fazed at all about it. And a little bit of butterflies, but they had a few transition days, but it is butterfly level. It's not stress, anxiety level. It's just like, this is how other people live. This is like, I've seen this on the telly. This sort of living.
Yeah, wow, lucky you.
Lucky me.
Anyway.
So, we had a podcast, actually quite a few weeks ago, which was, what was it, 12 weeks ago? It was like May. We recorded a podcast with Paul Shuttleworth, Dr. Paul. Dr. Paul, if you listen, that'll become important.
Yeah.
And I remember we had a right laugh. And so we're going to just put that on because I think that it stands alone. It's linked to the book, The Future of Children's Care, which has been released the last week or so. People can go out and buy that wherever, Amazon, or I think it's Policy Press. I do have a little caveat to the thing. It's a bit sweary. Actually, Scott, you're a bit sweary.
Am I? Wasn't I?
Yes, you were.
Really?
Yeah, well, it's so long ago, I've forgotten what we talked about.
Well, I was just thinking, because I can't believe it was May that we did it. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
And I can barely remember what I did earlier today. So I'm very alive. However, I do know that when we have Dr. Paul on, that we do actually have quite a laugh.
It was a laugh.
Yeah, and I actually, do you know what? He's probably the first person I've ever spoke to who I don't always agree with. But actually, he's just a genuinely nice bloke. And when I say don't agree with him, I'm talking about. So we had this conversation when we
Where
very
have you
first
been living? What?
I know. No. Listen. It's not.
So is that how you characterize all people you don't agree with as bad people?
No, not saying that. But Paul and I talked about the identifying as gay or queer and all that sort of stuff on the very first podcast that we did with them.
Yes, that was a while ago.
And it's interesting because he sent me a few links to stuff, and I've read them, and I've been like, yeah, I'm still very much, comfortable identifying as I identify. And if you want to identify something else, that's fine. But yeah, so often that people kind of go, well, this is how I identify, and I'm not good, and you're not a good person. Nah, because he's just a nice guy. So he does him, I do me. It's all good, and I love talking to him. Actually, he's a really, really genuinely nice person. So yeah,
absolutely. And
with a great sense of humor.
Well, yeah, it's very, very good sense. And I really back, and actually, it is really good. So it does talk a lot about kinship arrangement and kinship, and but it focuses in on the challenges of the McAllister review in terms of how it approaches kinship. It talks a lot about the presumptions we make about kinship, the lack of research. You were, if you probably can't remember, your wife remember, you got quite passionate about class. Yeah, you swore twice, so I've had to put an explicit on. The other thing was at the very end of the interview, Paul, we've talked about Josh McAllister, and we can safely say that Josh and Paul are not drinking partners.
No,
they're not. No, that's fair. So we chatted about that, and there's a comment at the end about whether Josh McAllister's political or not. And when we first recorded it, Paul listened back and said, actually, I feel like I maybe was a bit too strong on that point. And then so we snipped it out, and then we've put it on the shelf. And then, as if by magic, things have transpired in terms of Josh McAllister. I don't know whether you've been aware, but he's been nominated to be a Labour MP for a constituency in the north, kind of a safe Labour house. But it's been really quite controversial because two of the applicants pulled out about the way that non-people were nominated. So he's actually turned out to be incredibly political. So I was right.
Oh, no, yeah. I haven't heard that because I don't live in the UK, partially. But secondly, you clearly didn't tell me this. And it was interesting because, and obviously I couldn't watch it because I didn't catch it at the time, but the Joe Swash documentary that was on the BBC, he was in that. Joe Swash interviewed Josh McAllister. I don't know if you saw that, did you?
I didn't. I saw the interview. I saw the thing, but I didn't realize Josh McAllister had got himself into that as well.
Yeah. Some of the comments around it were quite interesting. But anyway, we'll leave that one there.
Well, it does provoke feelings. So that's Josh McAllister, and we're going to get him on. And I have to say, right, so yesterday, just a long story short, but I got in touch with someone, or they got in touch with me, and we kind of said, hey, I'd really like to talk to you. Psychosexual counselor. So, right, this is me adulting, so I'm not going to do. I'm resisting the 14-year-old boy in me who wants to be go for what's all that about? Because I am an adult. Sometimes I think, how did you get to be an adult? How did that happen? But what I found fascinating, she was talking a lot about the impact of early adversity and trauma on people and how that then can play out in relationships. And I thought that would be an excellent topic or an excellent subject or an excellent person to get on the podcast, because I think that is something that as the adoptive parents, as foster carers, we see challenges in relationships for young people as they move into our young adulthood.
Yeah.
But I thought that would be a really fascinating conversation. So she's going to come on.
And it will be, as long as we can work out what the meaning of her title is. Because what did you say it was? Psychosexual?
Yeah.
Psychosexual? That sounds wrong.
Well, we'll talk to her and you'll see that it's not wrong at all. Yeah, so I had a conversation with her. But anyway, that's something just trailing that's coming up. We've got Avery Bowser on in a few weeks as well. We can talk about the future of adoption. That's really interesting. And I guess this is coming out on Saturday, so on next week as well, or the week coming up if you're listening now, we'll have the Better Me, Better You podcast coming on as well. Which our friends Vicky and Haley, which is all very exciting.
Is it not Better Me, Better Us?
I genuinely don't know.
Oh my God, man. We're hosting these extra podcasts. You don't even know their names.
I'm sure it's Better Me, Better Us.
Yeah, you said Better Me, Better You, but whatever,
All right. Better
See,
Us.
this is, honestly, I slagged you off yesterday on Twitter because you slagged me off. And I slagged you off about your marketing. And this is proof. This is absolute proof that you are rubbish, man. Rubbish.
I'm so sorry, Vicky and Haley. I just apologize for being me.
Yeah, I've given them a virtual slap around the face for that. because obviously not in the same room. But anyway, yeah.
Excellent.
Yes.
Oh, well, on that note, I think we should put on the podcast, put on the interview, and we'll crack on. So, Bon Jovi.
Anchovy.
So today we're speaking to Dr. Paul Shuttleworth, who has very kindly put himself forward to come on the podcast.
Again.
Yes. And you still don't have to call me doctor, just to say that. So again. Actually, I prefer now. I tell you what now, I think I prefer Paul Shuttleworth, PhD, because I think that sounds a little less, what's the word?
Yeah, right.
Vulgar. I was going for vulgar.
Vulgar. Oh, how very gauche. So, Dr. Paul. You line them up.
To be fair, you need to rewind a little bit because Paul has been on before.
Yes.
And some people may not have listened to that episode because obviously I think it was a live we did, wasn't it?
It was, yes.
Yeah, so it was midweek. We did live and it came out maybe the Thursday or the Friday. So some people in the routine of podcasts may not have heard it, but you have been on before. And you're very welcome back.
Do you normally have people back? Or?
Yeah, the ones that are
you could have lied.
Stupid
said no.
We tend to call people that come back friends of the show.
Oh, okay, brilliant.
Yeah, so you are now officially a friend of the show.
That's it.
Yeah,
congratulations.
So the first time you came on, you were talking about, I think, the voices of children who found themselves in kinship arrangements.
Correct. Yeah.
Which was a fantastic, and I recommend people go back and listen to that because I think it was, again, just this idea of this unique perspective or just voices that we're not listening to or should listen to. But today you're coming on because you've written a book that is coming out or is about to come out or has just come out because we're recording this in advance. So tell us a little bit about this book, what it's about, and why you got to writing it.
Well, it's a chapter in a book. I haven't written the whole book, but I am actually. So I've been awarded a postdoc, which is amazing. And I am actually writing a book about kinship care, but that's out in 2024. That's out. So that's all my book. But I've actually written a chapter in this book, and it's a book. The editors are Robin Sen and Christian Kerr, and it's called The Future of Children's Care. So it's critical perspective on children's services reform. It's just basically looking at policy. It's kind of a policy book, but it's got critical, radical social work. Let's step out, and it's all kind of on the back of the McAllister review.
Oh,
so it's So it's kind of it casts a critical eye, shall we say, over the McAllister review. It's very good, honestly.
Yeah, I know Christian. I know Christian because Christian lives close to me, and we're in the same Baswa branch, so we get together and we occasionally have a curry together on Baswa funds. Can I say that?
No,
you just did.
All right. Oh, well, then we don't get together, and it's not Baswa funds, right? So that's
you network. You network.
We talk about stuff, social work stuff.
Yeah.
And I met
official,
Robin as well.
Sure. Yeah.
Oh yeah, very official. Yeah. We wear our social work uniforms. And they're kind of they're positioned quite clearly as people who are kind of not critical for the sake of being critical, but people who are trying to kind of think differently, trying to kind of like push forwards how we think about different issues around social care, social work, and that kind of stuff. So you've written a chapter in terms of kinship care, and you've kindly let us read it before it's been issued. So tell us a little bit about why you and what's your take on all of this then?
Why me? I'm not too sure. Because you've got in the book, you've got kind of Caroline Willow, Article 39. You've got people like Joe Hanley.
Yeah.
You've got people like Avery Browser. You've got John Rideau.
Yeah. Friend of the show.
Yeah. Friend of the show. There you go.
Yeah, he's been on once.
I'll let him know that. Rid Featherstone, Anna Gupta. You've got all these amazing people, and then you've got
massive
me.
names in there, like massive names for us, and this kind of world that we live in. Yeah.
And I guess what have they? They're not friends though, are they?
No, not
of the show.
Bridget twice, so yeah.
Oh,
Bridget is, yeah.
So this is a terrible interview. I'm sorry, but you've been doing really sensible interviews with really sensible people, so I'm really sorry that we're just ruining everything.
No, it's fine.
Really sorry.
Fine. It's absolutely fine.
Push through.
Yeah, I've been a bit of a podcast whore, as it were. But yes. So all of these great names, and I guess what brought us together is that we were quite critical in terms of the review, and we're quite critical in terms of critical social work. So that's kind of critical thinking in terms of Marxist terms, in terms of stepping outside of just policy for the sake of policy, next steps, and placing things in social, historical, political kind of perspectives, so wider perspectives, thinking about inequality, poverty, all of those really, really important things. And I guess we all held quite strong views about the review, and they weren't really heard as much as they should have been, which is really, really sad, because actually what we really wanted from the review was to include all voices, including very critical voices, and the less critical, everyone should be included, and that didn't happen. So I guess what happened was we decided, well, you know what, we will write a book. And actually that book, I would say, and I've read through it, is probably even better evidence. It's got better research in it than the review. So there you go.
Wow. Give me the title. Give me the title of the book, then people can find it. Because I'm hoping that we'll get free copies, but that only seems reasonable. But if not, no, you're shaking your head. No way.
Did you not read that email? He actually said you need to go and buy it, so you're not going to get a copy. Yeah,
Shy Ben's getting that.
And I won't be buying it, but only because.
Right, do you know what? This is over. I'm gone. See you later. Bye. Thank you. Thank you support, guys. It's really nice.
Can I just clarify for listeners? I wouldn't buy it because it's not. I've read the chapter, but being neurodivergent, it just glazed over. And like Al said, if it's a scratch and sniff when you're doing the children's version, feel free to run it past me, and I'll be more. To be fair, we've talked about this loads of times before about me and books. I just don't get on with books. So,
but I think that's a really important point, and I know from kind of getting my research out there and publishing my research that academia likes, I get reviewers kind of saying, actually, you need to make that a bit more academic in terms of its language, make it a little bit less accessible for kind of practitioners.
For the thickos.
For the people that actually really should be reading it.
Yeah,
we need to make it less accessible for them.
Yeah.
So that they're not research informed, and all of social work practice has to be research informed.
And I think this is taken away from the book, but I think as somebody who is really into accessibility for everybody, with the kind of work I do in terms of the hidden disabilities, sunflower. That's a big thing. That is a massive big thing. And I think that actually it would take somebody like you guys to actually say, do you know what? Bollocks to you all. We're going to write it in an easily accessible format.
Yeah, we can't do that because we need to get published, and we need to, get jobs and all of that kind of stuff. What we can do, and what I've been doing, is finding other ways. So using podcasts, using YouTube, writing something alongside kids as a practice guide, just everything kind of broken down in different mediums in different ways.
Thank you for doing that, because there are people who would like to know this information, but just can't.
In your defense, it's not written as it's kind of that middle ground. It's not like a article in a journal, which is like just hyper academic. It is written in a book format, and so it doesn't feel wholly inaccessible. Yeah. And I kind of went through it pretty quickly. And it, you can cut to the chase with it. It's not, it's not up its own backside. So, that was.
Thanks.
So yeah, well, yeah. Thought I'd better say that to try and keep you in sweet with the publishers. Honestly, man. I tell you, you need to go on some media training.
Yeah, I've had media training from Beza. So, yeah,
you broke the media training.
I need to try it. I need to get my head into the thing. So when I was working with Beza, accessibility is a thing, isn't it?
But it's interesting you say about being critical of the review and stuff. I mean, this is aside from the book. Sorry, but being critical does that have an effect on the day-to-day job, or is it actually of benefit to the day-to-day job? Because I always imagine, like, Al goes, sitting on the fence on that one because I'm a social worker and I can't say too much about that. I mean, is that right, or is that just like you can? if it's positively critical, as in it's it wants more for the people who are affected by the work that you do, is that a good thing, or is it a not so good thing in terms of your day to day?
What do you think, Al?
He asked the question to you. I think that this is.
I want to hear your answer first, because I'm quite interested in that.
This is
before you get into trouble.
I'm ready to let rip about this.
This is a good podcast, I'll have you know. Thank you very much.
I thought about this a long time ago, and I thought I'm never going to work in statutory services. And I'm the way and the place I work is it's unlikely I'll ever have an interview again. So I thought, if they try and get me through, when I presume when you go to work for an organisation, they'll just do a little media search on this person. And if they did that for me, they would like literally break the individual who was doing it, because I'm just everywhere. I'm like dog muck, get everywhere. But I think I'm happy to say anything as long as I can defend it.
Yes. Okay. But one of the sole purposes of social work is not just individual change, it's societal change. It's up to us. And actually, this book is really good in terms of the very end. It talks about, disrupt. That's what we should be doing. We should be shaking things up. We should be challenging the system we're in. It should be dissent all the time. Dissent. All of these things, because policy makers need to start listening to actually people that are working in the system and people that are families and children much better than they're doing, rather than, non-social worker policymakers coming up with these big ideas and enforcing them, pushing them on us. Yeah. And then what they do as well is that they not only do that, they kind of oppress workers, our working conditions are shocking, absolutely shocking. And we should all be standing up and saying, this is not okay.
Absolutely.
And that's our duty to do that, because it's not okay, not just for children and families. And I know that we can get really emotive about that, but actually think about us as workers. It's not okay that it affects our mental health. It's not okay that there was something that came out from a guy, what was his name? Last year, let me just think.
Don't worry about it. Make it up. Just get on.
There's a guy that he came out last year, and he was talking about it's a guy called something Murphy, C. Murphy, 2022. There you go. But he was talking about how social workers are the targets of threats, they're targets of intimidation, and it's a huge cost to their personal relationships, a huge cost to their health. And we're stuck in this thing, and then we get blamed. We get blamed for leaving because we're not strong enough, because at the end of the day, we don't have it in us to carry it on and all of this kind of stuff. But we're not stupid. Why should we be putting ourselves in that position every day, all the time? And so we need to change the system. And the way to change the system is not to say, social workers need to be better trained so that they can deal with it. No, we need to change to make sure our workforce is better supported, better funded, and that it's not having a detrimental effect on us and our families. I mean, so yes, I don't have a problem with saying that. And actually, I think it's the duty of social workers to say things like that. And that's what we should be doing.
I mean, that's fascinating, because I like the North American Association of Social Workers, their code of ethics. And I can't remember which number it is, but it kind of states there really clearly that a social worker, one of our core duties, our core roles is to challenge injustice and oppression. And then it says, regardless of whether it's in the people you work with, whether it's your local authority, but wherever it is, if it's on the micro level or the macro level, that's your job. And I think so few social workers are afforded that opportunity, and they're kind of kept in this machine that keeps them running so fast. They've got no energy for anything else.
And I mean, we talked about this. So Sarah and I do my friend Sarah and I do a podcast called Do You Do Social Work?
Hang on. Hello.
And it's much better than this. No, I'm just thinking.
Bold and brave.
No, so we do a social work podcast, and we were talking for Social Work Day, because it was all about social justice, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And we were talking about that, how we should be doing this. And, as you can see, I get very passionate about it. And Sarah was making a point, which is really, really useful. A good point is that actually new workers don't want to rock the boat because they want to have some job security. We know that for minoritized ethnic workers as well, for Black and minoritized ethnic workers, that they are more likely, unfairly, by the way, to be taken, to have complaints made about them to Social Work England. So they're less likely to speak up, you know? So actually, the more oppressed you are within your work, the less likely to speak up. And we're seeing this again and again, is that, as I keep saying, and I will always say, social workers are being oppressed and suppressed in their workplace. And it's not good enough. We need to be standing up for it.
I think that the majority of the listeners would probably agree with that in terms of, their understanding of that. And also, as potentially new parents or new foster carers, you would be less likely to challenge what you didn't have the confidence to challenge because you'd be too scared. You'd be frightened to lose a child because you're challenging. So I think that's kind of, there's different levels to it, but I think that broadly it's the same, isn't it? If you're new to something, that you'll be less likely to challenge, but actually new pairs of eyes sometimes can be,
Clearly.
Well, and that's really important, isn't it? Is that, people that have been in the job for a long time, this is what I tell the students, is that, you can have someone that's been in the job for 20 years and doesn't do that reflection, that necessary reflection, thinking about, personal values, professional values, how these things mix up, all of that kind of stuff. And they don't do that. And then you have a new social worker that's fresh, that has these ideas, this brings something new, brings their new experiences to the work, but also they're doing that reflecting thing constantly.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they will be better social workers. I will say this on tape. They will be better social workers than social workers that have been 20 years in and don't reflect. Yeah. Reflection is key no matter what stage of your career you're in. It has to be done.
Yeah. I used to love because we as a family, I was counting up recently, I had over 25 different social workers and social care professionals through the house, just as a matter of course, not all, just routine, a lot of it. And the ones that were just the most awesome were the ones that were 6 months off retirement. They were just absolute, it felt like the shackles were off and they were allowed to speak with absolute clarity, and didn't mind going and putting paint stripper on the CEO's front bonnet or something. But they were they were happy to. They weren't, but there was a sense of I'm just going to kick up a fuss because what can they do? I can speak exactly what I actually think. I can make this case, just put it to the top of the pile because it needs to be at the top of the pile in a way that perhaps they hadn't felt that way, like you say. At that midpoint in their career, 20 years in, 10 years to retirement, a bit.
I mean, we're told we have to accept things as they are, and we're told what to accept. And I suppose coming back to the chapter that I'm meant to be talking about.
Oh, God,
sorry.
All about you, isn't it, Paul?
But we're told all these things that actually this is the bedrock of what your practice should be, and it's very much trying to get rid of it. Gove, for example, was saying many years ago, social workers think too much about things like poverty and social injustice. They just need to be getting on and doing that job, don't they? That's what they need to be doing.
Yeah.
Stop thinking too much. We shouldn't be teaching them all of this fancy schmancy sociology stuff and all of that kind of stuff.
And then took another line of coke, but yeah.
Yeah. And then we don't know he did that. Oh, and we don't know that he was dancing with Lisa and Andy. So what happened was that what happened is that we get told these kind of assumptions and these myths, and they become the bedrock of our practice. And that's certainly true for kinship care. And that's what I was really tired of. I've been researching kinship care for a while now. And there's these kind of myths that, we shouldn't involve social work unless we really have to, because all social workers are, bad and all of that kind of stuff. You see that in the McAllister report, the first bit of the opening bit, wasn't it, of the case for changes. Isn't it terrible that this many children have had this many social workers? Is it terrible? Is it terrible that this many children have had state support, have been supported by the state when necessary? Why is that terrible? We also kind of get these kind of myths about that there's less risk in kinship care. Kinship care as a thing in itself will provide better outcomes. It's a direct alternative to fostering adoption. All of these kind of myths, and whilst they sound, yeah, absolutely. No, I agree with those. If you start stripping them back, first of all, they're based on unresolved debates within kinship care circles.
Yeah.
And secondly, they're not particularly well evidenced, actually. They're done by non-peer reviewed reviews and evaluations. And I can tell you, when you publish an article, what you will see is that the reviewers come back and they say, no, you need to have this in there. You need to have this balance. No, that's not correct. It's a really strict process. And that wasn't in there. That wasn't in in those things.
Well, I really liked your report because it starts with your chapter. Sorry, it starts with kind of the assumptions that we all make, and I read through them. It's better for the responsibility and care of children to be positioned within families.
Yeah, well, and we all go, yeah, great.
Yeah, of course. And it's like these kinship care should be recognised as a permanent solution, as a direct alternative to non-kinship care. Children better outcomes. It's an untapped resource. And then as the chapter sort of unfolds, you kind of come to this point where you go, well, maybe yeah, but maybe no. We can't, we need, so are you sort of in the midst of all that making a case for actually we need much more rigorous and longitudinal studies to say, what are the outcomes for these children? Because we're still only, are we 10, 12 years into the whole special guardianship?
Yeah.
I'm not going to say experiment, but.
I mean, it's saying something when my research was one of the only pieces of research that looked at explicitly and solely at the views of children and theorized alongside children into what kinship care, what family life actually means. Because normally what we do with kinship care, we treat it as a service. We treat it as an alternative service to fostering adoption, which is why I break down that particular thing. Because actually, if we treat things as an alternative to fostering and adoption, first of all, we know it's not, because fostering adoption is basically usually done on there's debates within fostering adoption, whether it's kind of substitute care. You're taking children from the bad families and giving it to the good families, and you shouldn't be, not that many years ago, 20 years ago, there was this whole idea that once a child had gone to a new home, they should cut all ties. Now we're beyond that now.
Yeah.
Thank goodness. Because we know that just because someone's not present in their lives doesn't mean that they're not present psychologically within their lives. So we know that there has to be some kind of safe connection that goes on. But that kind of separation thing, that ideals of separation, it doesn't work for kinship care, because children get reminded and children will know in terms of continued contact. But even if they don't have continued contact or family time or whatever we want to call it nowadays, what happens is that they will have those connections in terms of family resemblances, in terms of their grandmother saying, you know what, your mum used to slurp spaghetti juice on her chin when she was a child too. All of those little connections, those little reminders. And so it's not the same. And we're doing a disservice by treating it as the same. It doesn't work. And we're basically banging a square peg into a round hole, and we shouldn't be doing it.
And what sprung to mind when you were chatting there was about the class system as well. Because, if you think back to what they classed as relinquished children, in the 60s, 70s, maybe even as far as on in the 80s, actually. It was all seen as a middle class thing, that a middle class family would, have these children, take them in, adopt them, blah, blah, blah. And in actual fact, do you think it was the case that everybody was tarred with the same brush? So if a child, say, came from an unmarried mother, let's say, who was, who could have been 19, 20, 21, whatever, however age. Do you think it was the case that they just looked at it and went, yeah, well, that's a child that comes from that stock. So let's break the cycle and not look at the grandparents the grandparents probably wouldn't back then. But what I'm trying to say is it a class thing? Because I feel like even I was put in the middle class bracket, and I don't feel that I am. And
You are.
You are.
Yeah, I know, but I don't feel that I am, because actually my parents were very working class. Yeah, like very working class. And it's just so happens that they got opportunities that actually, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering how much of it is a class thing, when it comes to the kinship thing, because, if they're a crap parent, then what's the chances that their parents are crap? Do you know that kind of thing?
Ask your friend of the show, Brid, about that, Brid Featherstone, about that, because what she will do, she's actually broken that down alongside kind of Anna Gupta and other people. I can't remember who, but other people, just about actually that there is something going on in terms of class there, and it's not quite social engineering. It's not quite that sinister.
Yeah,
but there is something going on there, whether it's by intent or not. It's hopefully not about intent, is it?
Yeah.
Unless you're completely right wing, kind of, and hopefully we don't have too many of them in our government. I say that with trepidation.
It is. Well, yeah. I mean, that ship has sailed. We burnt our bridges with that business. I do find it fascinating, though, that we're, like you were saying, in terms of kinship care, the lack of actual research. You talking about your piece being like a sort of a standalone. We spoke to Michelle Natras over the last summer. And she's a kinship carer, but she's like the first person to do research into contact, on ongoing contact, and you go, wow, this is all of these presumptions based on like a nice feeling that we might be having about it, when actually the reality is so different. I recently did an event for a group of kinship carers, and it was just the sense of loss in the room and the palpable sense of trauma within the room was just overwhelming. Talking to 82-year-old who's caring for an 11-year-old with additional needs, and you go, what the hell? That's screwed up for everyone, isn't it? I mean, she would do it again, and I asked her, she said, there's no doubt I would do it again, but
of course. Well, we were, that's the point. When I'm doing an assessment, you have family members that go, of course I'll do it. No matter what, I'll overcome any barrier to do it. And it's only within, and that's another difficulty with it being based on kind of fostering and adoption kind of ideals, is that you only have 12 weeks to do this fostering and assessment, whereas foster carers how long do they get?
It's 9 months.
Right, 9 months. And doctors, how long do they get?
6 months.
Yep.
Well, there you go. And so,
go figure.
To fit this stuff into 12 weeks, when they have to deal with really fractious relationships, deal with things like guilt as well. Do I feel guilty about have I played a part in the dysfunction within my family? All of that kind of stuff they really have to work through. And it's only around kind of, it's only around week 4 or 5 when kinship carers are going, I'm not sure if I can do this. I think it's going to be really, really emotionally taxing. I think it's going to be practically a bit of a nightmare when, as an assessor, you will start saying, right, this is the point where we're at, because I think you can do it. But to get to that point, now that you're at that point, now we can start building real and realistic support around what you need, around what is going to happen, rather than, but it takes time. It takes time for people to emotionally understand what's going on, but also to really understand in terms of practical support what they will need.
It feels like there's a huge presumption about the people who come forward for kinship care that, like you're saying, when you put it in the contrast of 6 months for adopters, 9 for foster carers, 12 weeks, which is 3 months effectively. It's almost as if you're saying, well, there's a lot of stuff that's just right. We're just presuming that there's an awful lot of stuff that's right. So we're just going to focus in on this really narrow bandwidth in terms of the care you need to give, how the impact on you as a family, et cetera, et cetera.
And the difficulty then becomes is that, what do we do? Do we lower thresholds? No, we can't be doing that. Should we be lowering thresholds? These children deserve safe care that will allow them to flourish, in relationships that may be tricky, but the relationships that will ultimately benefit them. We should be lowering thresholds, saying, well, that'll do, hopefully. Let's cross our fingers. And actually, they're not going to meet fostering standards, so they can't be foster carers. So we'll get rid of that regulation. They're just going to be special guardians, and then we'll just leave them to it. I mean, that's even worse, isn't it? So, ironically, the people that need the support the most are the ones that are not getting the support.
Mm. And I think I'd agree with that, because I'll tell you for why. I remember when the kind of, I don't think it was called special guardianship back when, but I used to sit on a panel for fostering and adoption, and then the fostering panel became a permanence panel, and we had a lot of what we would now call special guardianship. They probably called it kinship back then. I'm really not sure. I can't be 100% sure. But what I found on that was that it was a given that whatever happened, if these families were willing to put themselves in the kind of caring parenting role, that it would be a given. It would. I mean, it shouldn't have. In my eyes, they shouldn't have come to panel. What should have happened was that it should have been looking at what support can we give this family, because the way it was seen was, if we can convert this to an SGO, we can pay them, and then off they go into the sunset.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it wasn't just family. I mean, we're talking longer term foster care. So people who'd been with foster carers and who were deemed, and I put my fingers in the air when I say this, unadoptable. So what do we do with them? Because they need to be in long term care. They're flagging red on our system, all this sort of stuff. And it wasn't about support. It was about, if we just pay them, then that's fine.
Yeah. What do we do with them? Awful, absolutely awful. And it is that thing, when kinship care, it can be, we know that it's a cheaper solution. It's great as well. On the surface, let's make these assumptions, this stuff on assumptions. We know that, it seems very reasonable, morally attuned, and really highly appealing that children remain within their families. And also there's less interference from these nasty social workers coming in and telling them what to do and assessing them and monitoring them and all of that kind of stuff. So it's much better on the face of it than fostering an adoption and social work intervention. But it's missing the fact that actually these are families. These are family relationships that need support. That's what social work is about. It's ensuring that children have safe, cared for environments and enough support. That's what it's about. I think we just miss a trick. We really do. And that's what really annoys me about the McAllister review and the direction of policy is what we're doing is we're kind of saying, right, let's split it up. So actually, first of all, let's split up between child protection and family support. There's only going to, for that really horrible, hard stuff, we're going to only have people that have had 5 years worth of experience doing that child protection stuff. Whenever I'm doing an assessment, whenever I'm supporting someone, if I'm doing a risk assessment, let's say it's a risk assessment, those things, don't stand alone anymore, thank goodness. But let's say I was doing one, the only way I could do a successful risk assessment is by ensuring that the right support is there. The only way I can look at what support people need is by finding out what risks are within the family and outside the family. And part of those risks are the facts that there are things like poverty, institutionalized racism, inequalities, all of these kind of stuff. So we need to look at the wider picture rather than just saying, oh, we can separate everything out. We can't. And that's not what social workers do. That's not what social workers should be doing.
So, I mean, so kinship care.
Sorry, I'm getting all het up.
No, it's the end of the day.
Spicy podcast. Spicy.
Yeah, angry.
No, not angry. Spicy.
No. But I did write down 3 words you said, which was dissent. And I think we should call this the dissent episode.
It's almost like exterminate.
But I was thinking, the temptation is when we talk like this in terms of the kinship care and the kind of the lack of, or that narrow focus, or that kind of that track of thinking that is quite well accepted, the norms of this is how we think about kinship care. There's not a grand nefarious plot, is there? You're not suggesting that by any means. But do you think it's just a?
Am I not?
Well, or are you saying that it's a political drive to save money or an ideology around family is best that overrides sort of
So Robin talks about this, and Robin and Christian talk about this in the book, and it's called a double shuffle. I think it is. I think it might be a dance. I think it's a dance move. So what happens is
they'd know. Having met Christian, that makes perfect sense.
So
I'm googling that.
Yeah, you Google away. So one foot goes one way, and then the other foot goes the other way. But they seem to be, part of the same dance, but actually they're going in opposite directions. That's called the double shuffle. I can't remember
exactly
who did
what it is. You're right.
There you go.
Yeah.
See?
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Dr. Paul comes up trumps. And so, this whole idea of actually what we need is we need to ensure that it's very family orientated, and that's good. We all agree with that. Support should be family orientated. It's all about families in whatever forms. And hopefully now we're recognizing there's different types of forms of family. Hopefully we've come that far, at least, that it is all about family. But also there's this whole idea that actually there's this slight privatization, these social enterprises that are popping up here, there, and everywhere. These not-for-profit charities, all of this kind of stuff, managerial creeping in, neoliberalism, and all of that kind of stuff. So the whole idea that actually these responsibilities lie on either individual workers or individual families. If anything goes wrong, who's to blame? It's either the family or the social worker. Usually both. We don't start thinking, oh, well, maybe it's something to do with the fact that you've been living in austerity for however long. No. Let's point the finger over there and whatever. So that's whole neoliberal individualism. And this whole idea, there should be as least state intervention as possible. And that's what Caroline Willow talks about, the rolling back of children's rights. I stand corrected. I think it was twice in the final report where children's rights referred to. Dissenting voices asked them to do a children's rights checklist, hoping that someone else would come along and do that for them. But who was marking the homework? The people that wrote the report. I mean, it's just senseless. So although I say, oh no, you might say, well, there isn't some nefarious plot. I don't think there's a nefarious plot, but this is the direction we're traveling in. And actually what we need to do is we need to pause. We need to stop. And we need to say, whoa, wait a minute. Who are the people that are benefiting from the abuse and the neglect of children, and benefiting financially, benefiting in terms of careers, benefiting in terms of, I don't know, knighthood, whatever it may be? Follow the money and just go, whoa. We need to stop and we need to say, wait a minute. We want these families to benefit. We want workers. We want resources. To talk about what Callum Webb talks about. So he talks about actually, we focus so much on efficiency with limited resources. And actually we should be talking about sufficiency first. We need the resources first, rather than just saying, well, this is what you've got, see what you can do with it. No. We need to be fighting for properly resourced services.
So, I mean, I'm conscious that the reviews ran out of time, really.
What review is that?
That thing
exactly.
Well, I mean, I'm not being funny. Can I just in there, Al? Sorry, because I feel like it's just like a damn squib. It was just I don't know. It just feels like they did it because they said they were going to do it, and it was this once in a lifetime opportunity, right? And now it's done, actually, on reflection. And I do reflect, believe it or not. I might not be, all singing, all dancing, social worky like Al or academia, but I do reflect. And I think it was a waste of space, to be honest with you. I don't think it has any benefit to the children that we've been discussing tonight, because I genuinely don't think that's what the outcomes of it were. And I think it was just somebody blowing smoke up somebody's a-hole to be able to say, well, we've done this now. And
so Who's
And
it
I agree with you,
benefit?
Paul. I don't think that it didn't last long enough. It didn't go wide enough. It just didn't do what a review like that should have done.
Who did it benefit? Who did it benefit at the end of the day?
I
We
don't
can
know.
see who it's benefited. We can see who it's benefited. Follow the money.
So
That's what I'm saying.
Oh, if we were paid, then I would. If we were
Well,
paid to
so-
do this shit, then
easy,
Just one.
Tiger.
yeah.
Dr. Paul's got delicate ears.
I do.
So when you say that, follow the money, I mean that's Watergate and all that kind of stuff, isn't it? But in the
That's Jerry
sense
Maguire.
that
Oh no, show me the money.
the show me the money.
Right.
It's different.
Show me the money.
Yeah. So you're suggesting really that, I mean, I sort of kind of agree, and I'm not. You're saying that really the people who undertook the review and that the kind of that group around, sloshing around that kind of community, and that's fair enough. You know, maybe they did review, but the government have not put enough money in to make any sort of effective change. And the fact that there's going to be
Well, they put money in some things, haven't they? Put a lot of money in things like Frontline. Interestingly enough.
But that's not the review, is it? That's just the Frontline is Frontline, and the people who are behind all of that. It's kind of this.
Whoa. One of the main responses to the review was, "Don't worry, because what we will do is we will have better trained social workers." Where will we get that? Oh, we'll get that by there's Frontline. And actually we can do early years career. Yeah, exactly. Early career framework. Oh, who can do that? Oh, Frontline. Oh, we need continuing professional development. Who's going to do that? Oh, Frontline. There's this whole kind of what works agenda, this whole kind of new reforms. All of this stuff, we've seen where it's come from. We see where it's going. We see those networks of power that Joe Hanley talks about. And I know that people may say, oh, this is a conspiracy theory or whatever. And I'm not suggesting for 1 second that people are nefarious, that people are doing this or whatever. But we need to stop and see actually who's benefiting and what the real benefits are. And we have to be evidence informed in the decisions that we make. We just need to stop.
Yeah, but my feeling is, and I totally get that, and I don't not believe that. Maybe it's me being mildly optimistic. I just don't believe there's a nefarious plot. But what I
don't think there is either.
Yeah, and you're not saying that, so I'm not. Yeah, I should stop using the word nefarious. A plot.
I don't even know what it means. So, and I'm sure other people will be googling it, going, "What the hell?"
It's a character out of the Minions film. What I'm interested in is that actually we're at a point now.
How can you mix the Minions film in with what we're discussing? Seriously.
Because this is podcast gold.
Yeah,
and to get even more political, it's used to describe Jewish people quite a lot. But there you go. But I'm sure we can talk about anti-Semitism.
Hang on, you've dragged me into being an anti-Semite.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'll editing the shit out of this podcast.
Oh my goodness! How did you lose your registration? But my point is that we're 18 months, about 18 months out from a general election. Is now not the time that, rather than fighting the government, because it's the fair chance that we're going to see a change of government, is now not the time to build bridges with the potential incoming and to lobby them to see, because obviously as a Labour government or a Lib Dem Labour alliance coalition arrangement, is there the potential to actually get something in their manifesto to say, so that's the axe to grind, because actually we know that this government are going to do what they're going to do. Yeah. No matter how much.
But they're not listening to us. We're disgruntled academics, we're disgruntled practitioners or whatever. I mean, that was a statement that was made. So why would they listen to us? No, well, why would they listen to us?
Yeah.
So yes, absolutely. And actually, throughout the process, I kept on saying to them, if you want to know about kinship care, I've written a whole literature review. It's placed in it describes beautifully, because I wrote it. It describes beautifully these the whole history of kinship care. So it's there for you. It's summed up for you. You don't have to do. And also, if you want to listen to hear about what children are saying about it, did they read it? I don't think so. From looking at the review, I don't see it in there. I didn't see it in the appendix of evidence or anything like that. So I know that different people in this book have tried to build those connections, but we haven't been allowed to. So all we're kind of saying is, look, let us in. Okay, you may not you may not agree with us, and actually, we might not even be right. You know, there is a very strong possibility that, you know, we're not right about everything. More than a strong possibility, a probability that we're not right about everything. But we need to be part of the conversation.
Yeah,
that's the nature of academia.
And that's what happens when you work together as well, isn't it? Collaborative working makes you kind of work out what you might be right and wrong on, to be able to come up with solutions to social issues.
Challenge each other, you know, challenge each other, and then you can reach a compromise. And without compromise, lasting change can't happen. I mean, that's the nature of making effective, long-lasting change. That's what we do in our work every single day, and that's what should be happening here.
But I'm sort of interested then because in some ways where you're shaking your fist at the man and the man is not listening, and it's very easy to characterize you as disgruntled academics because it's a lazy slur that sort of most people will go, oh, you know, experts, well, up your arse. So that's a
go thing again, isn't it? Interesting.
Well, and it comes out of the Brexit thing. It's the idea of, we don't trust the experts, and that's populism. But actually, so how are you going to then affect change through the incoming of the potential? People will be writing or thinking about manifestos now. And the review we've had came out of a manifesto. What are you doing then to reframe you from disgruntled academics into not progressive, because that's a slur as well, probably, into even anything you put in front of, I'm in my head, I'm trying to put words in front of the word academics, and all of it sounds like a slight on you. Progressive academics, does that work? Or
I still don't quite class myself as an academic, but carry on.
Well, look, you're a doctor. You just own it.
Yeah.
But is there, off the back of this book, is there a collective or a group of people who can apply pressure to whoever's writing a manifesto to say, we want a reconsideration of the review, or we want an actual review that is a once in a lifetime review, as opposed to what this could be easily characterized as a convenient review?
I think that's the beauty of this book. It's actually, it's arming us as people that have an interest in child welfare, whether you are a social worker, some other child welfare professional, foster carers, doctors, kinship carers, all of these people, very important people. And it's about providing knowledge to people so that we can actually start coming together and dissent, disrupt, so that we can come together and just, even small utterances when we're in a meeting with different people saying, oh, just hang on. Are we presuming that? Or do we have the evidence to say that is right? So is this quite correct? Can we look at things in a different way? So even the small utterances that we do every day, but also we can come together as a collective force, as we try to do in terms of the Care Review Watch Alliance, as BASWA tried to do as well when I was working for BASWA and responding to the review. So there are different channels that we can do, but what we want to do with this book is just kind of show people, arm people with the right knowledge, so that they can start just kind of changing things in small ways, or if they want, in kind of larger ways. But we need to be informed about kind of what's happening, the direction that we're traveling, and then we need to reflect on whether we think, we value, and we think that that's the right path to take.
Yeah. Are you optimistic for the future?
I'm always optimistic for the future. I mean, I of course I am. Of course I am. I think the future is tough. The future will always be tough. Everything will always be a challenge. I think things will be better with the new government. I'm not sure how much more better. more betterer it will be, but but I think it will. But I think things will be better. I think what might happen with the new Labour is that actually there might be this double shuffle again, and that might be problematic. But I think if we're going in the right direction, and if we continue to do research, if we continue to ensure that we're evidence informed in our practice, and we can come together and actually things will progress. Of course they will. But we're at a stage now, aren't we, where everything gets polarized because of social media, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And we see that, and people fall into camps very quickly. And that was another thing about, what's happening at the moment is that and what happened with the review, very quickly there became these kind of two different kind of camps. There was a split within, the care experience community of people that were for and people that were against. That's horrific. That's absolutely horrific that polarization should happen. It's not okay. And, it's a divide and conquer kind of type scenario, or it was, care experience against the social work, the social work, battered social work workforce, and they're all fighting, saying, no, this is right. And again, the use of, and John talks about this beautifully as well, in terms of, wheeling out particular people with care experience to help represent the huge diversity of care experience. But they're kind of wheeled out to say the right things at the right time and kind of promote the right narrative. And I'm not blaming people for that, but we need to be diverse. We need to, I will say this again and again, because this is what I'm all about. We need to be listening to the voices of people that are working within the system, but more importantly, the families. And that's our starting point, not these big ideas that I might have, other academics, not that I'm academic, that other academics might have, or policymakers. Actually, our starting point, the experiences, understandings of the people, the families, children, carers, parents, all of those people. That's what's important. That's our starting point, not our big ideas or small ideas or persuasions. And we need to get better at it. We need to stop just, as I say, kind of selecting who we want to listen to, whether they be care experienced or not. Tokenism. It's not okay.
Well, yeah, and I think that it's tricky, isn't it? Because having sort of, and I suppose, Scott, you like you and I, we've been a bit around government and the DFE, and a lot of good people there. So, there's a lot. I don't think I've ever met any of the civil servants who I don't have utmost respect for. I've never met anyone who's obstructive or fixed in their thinking. Really open-minded individuals, but ultimately they're led by politicians. And there's got to be political will, but there are these unique positions, a bit like with like the chief social worker, like people who get commissioned who are like Martin Neri, I guess, someone like that, who are people who are, they're sort of chosen to fit, like, like Krish Kandaya, who's a political appointee. And they're going to forward the government's agenda, really. They're not led by civil servants, they're led by political masters. Ooh, that's a phrase.
Masters. Now he's talking about nefarious.
Well, that's how it works, isn't it? I know that, when you think about I suppose we know about the adoptions are. We know that the adoptions are met with the minister regularly, and Martin Neri did a lot of good. I think, it has to be acknowledged, but was also quite a polarizing figure. But he was a political appointee, so he was that's his role. And similarly, when you've got people like the chief social worker, it's a political appointee. They're not going to choose someone who's going to criticize them. So,
do you think Josh McAllister was a political appointee?
That's
an interesting question.
Well, I mean, I don't know now, so I've got no the word on the street.
Don't. There's splinters up your butthole again, folks.
No, right. So I think that he was the right person for the job. For what they wanted to achieve, he was the right person for that. So is that a political appointee? So it wasn't that they cast their net and said I think they had a very clear idea about where they wanted to go in terms of scope, in terms of length of time that review had. They had to do the review. He had a track record that they liked through Frontline, and so they probably thought, well, he's the right fit for it. Is he? Is he clearly an intelligent, capable, able individual? But he wasn't. You could. There'll be hundreds of people like that with similar quality and knowledge and insight, but he was the right person for the job. He's got a track record through Frontline, which was a DFE funded program. So
I think.
He wasn't going to rock the boat.
So I'll give my my media trained answer, shall I? No.
Give your I've had 3 glasses of wine and it's Saturday night and we're in a pub answer.
We're not recording this, are we? Are we recording this? I thought we were just having a chat.
Just a friend.
I wanted to prove that I could do it. I can actually
go on then.
Okay.
Go on then. Go on.
Okay. Let me try and focus. Do you need to
practice? Do you need to do scales or something? I don't know.
It's you have to get into that mindset of pivoting, isn't it? The Matt Hancock thing. So I'm a celebrity. Do you know what I'm talking about? No. Okay. And now I've got image Matt Hancock. Right. Okay. Okay. So I think I don't think it's fair to actually pick on particular reviews or chairs of reviews, but I think what's really important is that when we start doing reviews of things like child welfare or child welfare, is that the person that actually fronts it is independent, first of all, that they have kind of a wealth of experience and knowledge in terms of kind of larger research or reviews, and they make sure that the views of communities are kind of are meaningfully placed. They're not exploited. And also that the chair has, a wealth of experience and knowledge of social work theory, practice, policy. And I'd ideally say they should be social work trained and have direct social work practice experience, or at least be kind of some social work academic. I guess for me, what will be interesting is looking at Professor Ray Jones and that review, because I think that he has those experiences. I think he has those key kind of core attributes to make a really good review.
But even a judge, you could, if you got a retired, well-respected family courts judge who's got an experience, you can guarantee that independence and level of scrutiny.
Yes,
and be advised by someone like a Ray Jones. There's a whole raft of people who have got potentially the right skill set that would.
But it needs to be people that know social work practice. If you are talking about social work practice, it needs to be people that know social work practice. And this is my non-media response. I think it's really telling that actually, Josh McAllister, we talk about him being a teacher, and why should the teacher be leading a review and social work and all that? And he's going to say, it's not just a social work review. Actually, what's more important, I think, is not that he's a teacher, is that he's got a master's in politics and social policy. What we have is this kind of front man, this very affable, nice, handsome,
he's lovely
man, who is essentially a politician running this review, or ran the review. That's who we had running the review. Make no mistake.
It might be a stretch. He's not. He might have I don't feel like he's a politician, but he's not uncomfortable around politicians.
But he was doing it. I guess what I'm trying to say is that he was using. He has knowledge in terms of, he's very politically aware, isn't he?
Yes.
Very politically astute. Definitely. He knows how to wrap things up in a really, really nice package. So rather than go for someone with social work theory, knowledge, practice, all of that kind of stuff, we go for someone that has politically astute awareness. So maybe he's not a politician, maybe you're right, okay? But actually one of his key attributes wasn't that he's a teacher, it was that he is politically astute, he is politically aware, he is able to play the game, and hopefully that would be for our advantage, but it might not be, you know. I think it's yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in some ways, we're getting into the minutiae of the review, and in some ways that it's been and gone. And so
but who else has done that, Al? And that's the thing. I'm not, you know, I mean, I'm just throwing in these little bombs now and again, but who else has looked at it from that perspective? And who's been listened to? That's the thing, you know. It's almost like the COVID thing. Okay, did we deal with it the correct way, or has what has happened since influenced how we feel about it? So, you know, as an example, the WhatsApp messages and blah blah blah. There's no WhatsApp messages here, just to be clear, in case anybody starts to go, "Oh, where are these WhatsApp messages?"
I've been invited. I'm from the show.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I'm talking about Matt Hancock's, not ours, because you really don't want to see ours. But what I'm saying is that, you know, it's like nobody's questioning the care review in that respect and going, actually, do you know what, was it done right? Because actually all they've done is they've gone, oh right, okay, that's care review done, tick. Okay, so, and how long are we on? We're like, is it a year since that was? No, it's not a year, is it?
Yeah, it's a year since it was released, isn't it? Give or take.
It was released.
Not far off.
And
10 months.
What have we seen? We've seen nothing. Okay, I you know, it's been talked about occasionally. Yes, there was a big thing about it, blah blah, but that actually there's nothing else. So it needs, to me, it needs this kind of pressure to say, and that might be my NGO kind of, you know, social enterprise personally kind of hat being put on there and saying, no, actually, do you know what? You're not doing it, because all you're doing is you're just saying, yeah, it's done, but we need to see that change.
But this isn't a conversation that's just up. You know, as soon as he was appointed, people wrote a letter, and it was signed by academics saying, and practitioners, and
admittedly, I don't know who he was, so you know, I'm not a social worker, for the job.
Yeah, well, you know, saying that this isn't the right person for the job, but no one was listened to.
Yeah.
Once again, you know, no one thought, let's just whoa.
And who did appoint? I mean, I'd be interested to know who did appoint. I mean, I can imagine it would have been the children's minister at the time, or whoever, you know, whatever.
I would have thought education, not children.
No one knows.
Yeah,
no one knows.
Exactly. Nobody knows.
Nobody
well,
knows.
I mean, we're a long way off your book.
Sorry,
not actually.
It's not his book. It's a paragraph. His book is out in 2024. You need to come on.
Excellent.
With the program, man.
Give us the full name.
He clearly wants to come back. That he's told us about his book that's out in 2024.
And you ain't getting back on without a copy.
2 copies, thank you.
2 copies. Tell us the full title of the book that your chapter is in and edited by Christian and Robin.
So it's called The Future of Children's Care. I think I said this.
Yeah, but we need you to say it again so that we can say.
Have you not done your media training? What were you doing during your media training?
I just proved to you that I did my media training, and you didn't praise me. So,
oh my God, needy.
Right. Yes. After every sentence, you're meant to say, "As I wrote in my chapter." As I wrote in my chapter. That's what you need to be doing.
As I wrote in my book. No, this is as I wrote in the chapter. As I said, okay. So it's called The Future of Children's Care, Critical Perspectives of Children's Services Reform, and it's there to help mobilize, encapsulate, and dissent, and really, I don't know. It's honestly, I can't say how much of a great read it is. It's just, it really opens your mind and kind of lets you reflect, and you may disagree with me, you may disagree with lots of people, and that's absolutely fine. That's not the purpose of the book. The purpose of the book is that we should be reflecting. We should be reflecting about what this means in terms of future directions of children's care, and what it means in terms of actually where we are now. It's just a real eye-opener. I think it's going to be one of those books.
Well, excellent. I'm really looking forward to reading it, actually, and I will I think I know where Christian lives, so I'll go and doorstep him. But that ends usually very badly for social workers who doorstep him. And that's a tale for him to tell.
And Baz was expenses as well. By the sounds of it.
Yeah, and Baz, no, it's fine. So
yes,
Dr. Paul, thank you so much for coming on. It's been absolutely wonderful.
It's been a pleasure.
Well, yes.
Although I haven't really talked about my chapter, it's been a pleasure.
That's been an absolute pleasure. We've had so much fun and we've unpicked all kinds of things. So thank you so much for your time. Look after yourself, and we look forward to reading the book and your book next year as well. Excellent.
Yeah,
bye.
definitely.
Excellent. And now I'm a friend of the show, I can be invited back. Is that correct?
Well, you invited yourself on this time, didn't you? You rang me up and said, can I come on and talk about this?
Okay. All right then. Okay,
Yeah.
bye.
Bye.